Hello, friends. This is the Netarts Friends Church podcast. We are Jesus people, Kingdom of God people, welcoming, yearning, sharing. And we're glad you're connecting here with us. We'd love to connect in person as well. If you're inclined to support this podcast or for more information, just hop on over to netartsfriends.org. That's netartsfriends.org. Let's jump into today's sermon. Have you ever known this feeling where you say, man, I'm burning the candle at both ends? Or maybe you say, I'm running on fumes. My flame is flickering. It's all but out. Or my spark is just gone. I fizzled out. Or maybe you say, I used to light up the room, but I don't anymore. I've lost the sparkle in my eyes. Or maybe you say only embers remain, or my fire went out. It's all various ways to capture this experience of burnout. Whether we're talking about work, family, church, community, personal health, burnout is when you say, I can't even. You just feel like you don't have what it takes to do what is needed. Do you know that feeling? Experiences of burnout exist on a continuum from, we could say, low grade to severe. Some people think about burnout as an individual problem. They say it's a you problem. And so they might say all you need is some rest and some refreshment, like go get a vacation, or you burned out, go get a vacation. You just need to figure out your stuff and recharge your batteries. And there's truth there. We're all responsible for our own emotional, physical, spiritual health. And our first call is to stewardship. It's to be good stewards of ourselves. That is true. And life doesn't happen in a vacuum. I've known a lot of people who went and got a vacation and they should have returned rested and refreshed if you're just evaluating their vacation, but they were still burned out. They were still running on fumes, still struggling. Why? Well, there's another way of looking at burnout that says that burnout isn't only a you problem, it's an us problem. Whether it's a family, the workplace, a church, a community, there's a lot of research that says that burnout is a symptom of the unhealth, the dysfunction, the anxiety within that system, that relational, emotional, family system, whatever it is. It's a relational problem more than a workload problem. It's affected by chronic anxiety in the system, relational stuckness in the system. It happens in systems where people are unable to separate themselves from the anxiety of other people. It's affected by how isolated you are, what kind of a team you have around you, how complicated your support relationships are, how self-differentiated the people within the system are, especially the people in leadership, whether they're self-differentiated or enmeshed. Burnout researcher Ann Helen Peterson says, burnout happens when there is a growing gap between what is promised if you just work hard enough and the opportunities that are actually available to you. Burnout is what happens when you're blamed for struggling in situations that set you up to fail. You become a pile of smoldering ashes, a bad memory of your best self. Research psychiatrist Josh Cohen says burnout is the intense yearning for a state of completion with the tormenting feeling that it cannot be attained, which creates the feeling that your mind has turned to ash. So, a discussion question here. We chatted in groups about this on Sunday. What do you think it does to someone struggling with burnout when it's suggested that they are solely responsible for the problem and the solution? So take a moment and reflect on that. All right. This brings us to the story of fire in the first century and across most of history. If you look up NASA's Earth at Night webpage online, it shows picture after picture of the glow of human civilization. Massive cities, highways, oil fields, fishing fleets, mining operations, all emitting light, electricity. So you can see here North Africa, the Mediterranean Sea, Israel, Palestine, a whole lot of Europe. But if you could have taken this same picture in Jesus's day, it would have shown almost no light. Because by and large, life at night in the ancient world shut down. You couldn't just flick a switch and have light. You needed to kindle a fire, which meant planning ahead and kindling a fire in the daytime, because kindling a fire in the dark was a major pain. And then not only did you need to light an oil lamp, but you had to stay up all night, replenishing the oil in your lamp, adjusting the wick. Otherwise, your fire would go out. Fires and lamps at night were a sign of hospitality, special occasions, welcome, food, warmth, parties, weddings, celebrations. All right, that brings us to our gospel passage today, a passage about keeping the fire burning, a passage that has something very important to say about your experiences of burnout. Luke chapter 12, 35 through 53. Be dressed, ready for service, and keeping your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will dress himself to serve. He will have them recline at the table and will come and wait on them. And it will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Peter asked, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? The Lord answered, Who then is the faithful and wise manager? The steward who the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time. It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that these servants should say to themselves, My master's taking his time about coming. And suppose they begin to beat the servants, both men and women, and to eat, drink, and get drunk. The master of those servants would come on a day when they weren't expecting him, at a time they couldn't predict. The master will cut them into pieces and assign them a place with the unfaithful. That servant who knew his master's will, but didn't prepare for it or act on it, will be beaten severely. The one who didn't know the master's will, but who did things deserving punishment, will be beaten only a little. Much will be demanded from everyone who has been given much, and from the one who's been entrusted with much, even more will be asked. I have come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. But I have a baptism to undergo, and what constraint I am under until it is completed. Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division. From now on, there will be 5 in one family divided against each other, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. All right. I know we could all come to this passage with a desire to, quote, figure it out. But I'm not sure that's why Jesus told this parable. So rather than figuring it out, I want to invite you into a meditation, a reflection, a prayer exercise, recognizing that Jesus told a story that actually happens all the time. And I want to invite you to use this story as a way of seeing and trusting and receiving what Jesus wants to give to you. Weddings. There's a reason that people cry at weddings. Weddings aren't just events. They are milestones. They are symbolic markers of belonging, identity, value. The past, the present, the future all converge at weddings. Try to imagine the emotional experience of a slave. That's who this parable is about. It's about slaves. Imagine the experience of a slave excluded from a milestone event like a wedding in the household, left to stay home and tend the fires. Talk about a low of the lows. Part of the house, but you're not part of the family. To be excluded from a milestone event would amplify every feeling of missing out on the story of life, being unseen, disconnected, not valued. It would amplify every feeling that life is just moving on without you. Other people are living the dream. They're feasting, they're dancing, they're celebrating. But for you, the dream is unreachable. It would bring up every feeling of loneliness, shame, unworthiness. Remember what we said about the experience of burnout being connected to isolation, being without a healthy family system, without a healthy team or a support network? It can be really hard to keep those fires burning when you've been left home alone to keep them burning and you feel like life is moving on without you. You're alone, you're forgotten, you're left out. It's really tempting to just let that fire go out. And it even feels gross. It feels wrong to act like you're ready for a party and stay up and tend the fires when the truth is everyone is partying without you and you aren't even invited. That feels like a perfect recipe for burnout. Perhaps it helps here to close your eyes. Go to a memory in your own life of feeling isolated, excluded, left out, without a healthy team, without a healthy support network, missing a milestone, life moving on without you. What were the dynamics that made you feel isolated, forgotten, left out, without a place, without access, without a voice? If you had to choose a word that describes what that feels like, what word would it be? Say that word to Jesus. Express that pain. All right. You can open your eyes. Burnout happens when there's a growing gap between what's promised if you just work hard enough and the opportunities that are actually available to you. It's what happens when you're blamed for struggling in situations that set you up to fail. It's finding yourself trapped in a system that's broken. You become a pile of smoldering ash, a bad memory of your best self. When you encounter those debilitating feelings, those feelings want to bring out all kinds of ugly coping strategies. Peter asked a question of Jesus out of fear and judgment. You know, Jesus tells this parable, this story, and Peter wants to know who the parable is for or about. Jesus doesn't answer his question. Jesus elaborates on the myriad of ways that people's lives fall apart and implode and self-destruct. And the more you look at it, the more you realize Jesus is telling the story of humanity. Not only do we experience oppression, but when we feel stuck, we can become in our own way, all of us, the oppressor. For some people, they fall apart by giving up on stewardship. They give up on leaving this world better than they found it. In Jesus's answer to Peter, when Peter's saying, well, who is this for? Part of the story that Jesus tells is someone giving up on stewardship. The stewardship in the story is food distribution. When you feel trapped in a broken system, you can completely give up on making the world better than you found it. Forget about the bellies of others. Forget worrying about helping the world. No one's trying to help you. For some people, they unravel with the questions that they start asking. The master said he was going to return, but is he? Or there was talk of my intrinsic goodness or of life being good. I'm not sure either of those are true. I'm not sure I'm deserving or worthy of anything good. Some people, when they find themselves trapped in a system that's broken, they become incredibly angry and violent, hurtful with their words and their actions. It's often said hurting people hurt people, and oftentimes when you feel like you're running on fumes or your fires have all but run out, the people around you receive all of that pain that's built up inside of you. They receive the full blast of your rage at a system that's broken. Some people cope with these debilitating feelings by grabbing the bull by the horns. They take what they want: food, wine, women, whatever. They say, my life's not going to be good unless I make it good. Why should the people at the wedding banquet be the only ones feasting, drinking, making merry? Forget distributing the bread and the wine evenly. And so they start, in Jesus' parable, they start feasting and gorging and getting drunk. They take what they believe is rightfully theirs. They abuse their power. Anyone standing in their way gets the full brunt of their rage. They become oppressors. For others, their feasting and their drinking isn't about grabbing the bull by the horns. It's about escape from reality. It's unhealthy self-soothing. It's doing something to try to extinguish the shameful feelings of being unloved and unseen, unworthy. People in this space might binge on shows, escape in their phone, alcohol, drugs, food, porn, work, shopping. It's escape because your fires have burned too low. I want to pause here and remind you of something Jesus reiterated over and over earlier in this conversation with his disciples, but we didn't actually read it today. So I need to remind you, if you read earlier in this passage, I need to remind you that you are Jesus's friend, that you are under his protection, that Jesus values you, he delights in you, your life is beautiful to him. Every sin can be forgiven. Every sin can be forgiven. You can be completely honest with Jesus. So without beating yourself up, simply be honest about the various ways that you cope with your experiences of feeling isolated, left out, stuck in a broken system, when you feel like life is moving on without you. How do those dynamics play out for you? How do you give up on leaving the world better than you found it, or you question your goodness or God's goodness? Who around you gets hurt when you're burning out? How do you try to take control and misuse your power? What are the unhealthy ways you try to self-soothe? How do you get hurt? How do you contribute to your own pain and suffering? Nothing you can say is going to surprise Jesus. So I'm going to pause here for a minute and just give you space to name the story. Tell the story to Jesus. What happens when you're trying to cope with those feelings of burnout? Okay. I want to invite you to imagine yourself in that dark house. You are staring at that flickering lamp. That flickering lamp stands as a symbol of all of the pain. Being a part of a household, but not a part of a family. Not being invited to the wedding. It stands for the gap between how hard you're working and the opportunities available to you. The yearning for something and feeling like it can't be attained. Being blamed for struggling in a situation that feels like it set you up to fail. Feeling stuck in a system that's broken. And wishing that things were different. You hear a knock at the door. You unlock it. And you can't believe your eyes. It's the bridegroom and his entourage. He's left his own wedding banquet. He has traveled out into the dark of the night. He is bringing the party home. Your mind immediately goes into servant mode. You're going to need to kindle the fires. You need to pour water to wash feet, prepare food. There are a million different tasks. But the bridegroom slows you down. He sits you down on the couch, on the triclinium. That's what they called it. The seat of honor. He has you recline. This is the seat where slaves are never allowed to sit. He has you prop up your feet. He tucks in his robes. The bridegroom becomes your slave, and he brings the wedding banquet to you. Now, many of the fires have gone out. He works on getting them kindled, lighting every lamp in the house, and he begins whipping up a feast. You were so close to believing that a good life was no longer possible for you, that it was out of reach. But while he's whipping up the feast, he keeps saying over and over, "This is gonna be good." And you're overcome with emotion. Not only because it's a complete role reversal, but because of the amount of hope that's flooding in. It isn't just the house that's being flooded with light and warmth and hospitality. That fire of love is flooding your heart with hope. Everything inside that felt like it had turned to ash feels like it's coming alive. There's something beautiful, something alive with love and health and hope that's happening here. It feels like a dream. You are important enough. You are valued enough. You are precious enough that the bridegroom doesn't want to celebrate without you. He is sticking his neck out for you. He is showing his family the true fire of his love. What is it that happens in your heart when the bridegroom hands you a plate, heaping full of food, and with everyone watching, you take your first bite? What is it that heals as the singing and the dancing begin, and the bridegroom pulls you into the dance with the rest of the family? It isn't only healing whatever hatred of self or hatred of others or even hatred of the bridegroom. You look around the room, you see that something within the family, something within the community, something within the system is being healed as well. That same fire that earlier tonight stood for everything ugly is now burning brightly as the fire of love. Sit with that for a moment. How does that feel? Jesus finished this parable, and he looked into his disciples' eyes, and he said, I've come to bring fire on earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. Jesus knew that the story he had just told was controversial. He knew that a bridegroom bringing the party home to the excluded slaves and stoking up the fires and serving the slaves, that story was unthinkable. And he knew that any bridegroom who actually did this was majorly disrupting things within the family system. They were not bringing peace to their family. This was not an action that would initially feel like peace within the family system. It was common for 3 generations to all live under one roof. What would mom and dad think of this? What would the in-laws think of this? Something this radical was bound to turn father against son and son against father, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. But this was the fire that Jesus was kindling, the fire that burns away from every heart and from every system all that is not love. Jesus said to his disciples, "You do not know when I'm coming." The secret of this fire that Jesus kindles is that it shows up when we least expect it, over and over. It's the fire that burned before Moses without consuming the bush. It's the fire of the fiery furnace that left the Hebrew children unsinged, and having been with Jesus. It's the fire that showed up at the slave's house in the dead of night when they least expected it. It's the fire of Pentecost that came to rest on the heads of all the women and all the men who were gathered. Ambrose of Milan says, with its fire, love makes better whatever it touches. Here's the question I want to invite you to ask Jesus about your life. What is the flickering flame in my life right now that stands for everything ugly and broken to me? But through your healing presence, you want to cause to burn bright and warm and beautiful. as the fire of your love. Help me see the fire through your eyes and your hope. We close with Isaiah 42. Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged until he establishes justice on earth. In his teaching, the islands will put their hope. Thank you for joining us for a Sunday sermon from Netart's Friends Church. We hope you'll join us soon for one of our in-person worship gatherings. For more information, hop on over to netartsfriends.org. God's peace be with you, friends.